And so we got to a stage where we started doing like 3D prints of the polar bears, like the heads and the claws. And so you feel totally ridiculous because you're running around with like a claw and this like, be like rawr.
From Apple TV Plus.
What are we looking for again?
Guys, a Guriel. There's only 600 of them left in the whole world.
Turn back! Turn back!
Graybeard! Mom! You know chimpanzees can't swim.
Matt, how's it going?
It's going great. How you doing, Jim?
Doing well. I feel like I'm potentially interrupting you during work hours and doing something important.
Well, as it's visual effects, everything is fake behind me. So we are all working remotely. So it gives a good illusion.
I love it. You see, this is a visual effects master at his work. You know what I mean?
See?
Throwing everyone off, thinking he's working extra hard.
You got to love it.
I love that. That's so cool. So you were primarily involved with visual effects on this, or did you have other areas of also expertise that you were working on the show?
Yeah, honestly, this show's been one that we've been so excited to bring together. So Sinking Ship, JJ Blair and myself started, 21 years ago, which
wow.
It was weird to start a company when we were 6, but we did it anyways. And then we built it up. And so this is one we're super proud of. So my role at Sinking Ship, I'm one of the partners, but I kind of focus in on the animation and the visual effects and a lot of the technology behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I dabble in tech, and for a show like this where we have so many different creatures that we're bringing to life, it's been a crazy adventure, and we're super excited for the audience to see it.
How has it evolved with the effects since you guys started? I mean, I'm sure it was like a whole day and night sort of change to what it is now with when you guys started with effects and the software and just like the quality of it too.
You're totally right, Jim. It's been a massive transformation. Our very first show, which I'm super proud of, was called Dino Dan, and it was about a little kid that saw dinosaurs. And we did, about 10, 15 dinosaurs, and they were all like great for the time, and I'm super proud of it. But with this, we've really scaled the team up. We had about 150 artists working alone. There's 170 different assets and 33 real creatures. So we went as far as like working with like full-on biologists to work on like figure out how do these creatures move, and diving into like the muscle structures of like, okay, so a wolf will move like this, which is different than a tiger, which is different than a lion, and all of the stuff that we thought we knew. And we're like, we like to make pretty pictures, but we really kind of dived into like the biology of everything. And I think that the best day was when we all actually went to the zoo to sit and stare at animals to realize how little we actually knew about how these creatures moved. So it all started with like, obviously trying to bring Jane Goodall's message to a new audience, but really trying to find a way that we could really captivate the audience, kind of bring the kids into a crazy world. So, in one of the first episodes, we actually dive into like a beehive, and we had to build all the different like cell structures inside a natural beehive versus an artificial one. Wow. And kind of dive into like all of that micro detail. So it's been a huge labor of love to get it going, and we're super pumped about the quality of where we were able to push it for TV.
Yeah, no, you mentioned TV too. You don't have sometimes the budget that you do for a film, but you guys really did well with the graphics and the visual effects. Because I remember one scene in particular, I think the first episode with the polar bear, when she like pets it, like that hair of the polar bear looked so real, as if I was petting kind of like an animal myself. It's kind of a zoomed in shot of that. I thought it was like getting the hair and the fur of it was really magnificently done too, because you got to see kind of an up close look.
Oh, thanks for that. It's definitely been a huge process to kind of like dive into how to execute it at scale too. We're doing 20 episodes, so that there's a lot of, timing constraints that we have to kind of figure out. But that's kind of the great thing. We kind of handle all of the production under one roof. So we do all of the live action, all of the visual effects, all the animation, all under one company. And I think that sort of like hand in glove relationship has allowed us to do what we have to do in the timeline we have. And so I can't wait for the audience to see it. Graybeard was such a giant process to bring it to life. The polar bear episode's crazy to have a polar bear in a swimming pool running
Yeah.
through an avalanche. So I think it's going to be a joyride for the audience.
Yeah, and just how hard is it to blend in the live action with the graphics, like kind of the animals in a sense here, and make it pretty seamless. At some point, I thought in the beginning, I thought it was all real, actually. So you got me there, like in the first few minutes, then I figured it out, but it looked that good, you know what I mean? So that's a credit to you and what you do. But is this a difficult process to blend it in with live action versus it being just all animation in a sense? Getting those two kind of superimposed.
It's definitely been, a process getting everyone's head wrapped around what they're supposed to see. Because obviously on the day, you're getting everyone used to the fact of like, okay, so this tennis ball moving around is eventually going to be a polar bear that could eat you, but it's a tennis ball, so don't worry about it. And so we got to a stage where we started doing like 3D prints of the polar bears, like the heads and the claws. And so you feel totally ridiculous because you're running around with like a claw and this like, be like rawr and trying to get everyone as to kind of wrap their head around what they're actually going to eventually see. So the process is obviously way easier if it was all animated, but that to us is kind of like the excitement that we like. We wanted to do a show where it was all real animals, so all CG animals versus using real animals, but try to make it look as believable as possible.
Right.
And so, you know, on board and they get into it and they can visualize and they're like, they eye lines better than adults in no time flat. So to us, that's kind of the best thing, is that so much of the magic takes place in the kids' world and really kind of leans in on the imagination of like, what if my stuffed animal came to life and was a real chimpanzee? And so it's been really fun to kind of see and kind of adapt our techniques, because the kids pick it up right away. And the for the adults, it's like, this will eventually be a polar bear. This will eventually be a tiger. You'll be chased by it. Don't worry about it.
Was it difficult to animate certain animals one versus the other, or no, it's sort of the same process all around? Or did you find on certain animals it was more difficult to bring that animation and the reality sort of it to life?
I think it's been really fascinating to look at some of the animals that we don't know as much about. So on one hand, something like the Gharial, which to be honest, I didn't even really know existed before we did this show. Um, it's really tricky to find data on some of these endangered animals. So, it kind of looks a little bit like a crocodile with a really, really long nose, or a little bit like an alligator with a long nose and a bulb. And so trying to figure out like, okay, well, how does this move? And that's really where, we had this amazing consultant out of the University of California, Dr. Stuart Samata. And he was awesome because he taught us all about like locomotion and gait movements and all of these things that I had no idea like were so different, and creatures that walked on their toes versus their heels. So I kind of feel like we got an honorary biology degree in this process and figured out so much more about the animal kingdom. But yeah, I would say, the chimpanzee is fascinating because they are so similar to us. So, and there was a lot of references, but it was really interesting. Like we worked with a facial consultant that studied human faces, and we adapted a lot of that technology onto the chimpanzee face because we wanted to play the chimpanzee close, like very authentic, but with a few humanoid characteristics. So without a doubt, it was definitely finding that balance in Graybeard, and that really was probably the biggest challenge. But I feel like we kind of struck a balance between playfulness and also realism with that.
I definitely thought Graybeard was I was still debating by the end of the first episode, Graybeard is like the actual authentic animal versus all the other ones are imagination, because I think Graybeard came out the best in a sense, because it was just like yeah, like you said, the seamless movements of it, the facials were very much on par. So it had me guessing till after the first episode. So that's well done there. I wanted to ask you about the animals and their surroundings in the episodes, because like you have the polar bear at the pool we talked about. Second, you have the shark in a grocery store. Like, were you and JJ debating what surroundings kind of to put him in and what locations? Because like each location's really unique here. It's not all taking place in one spot. Basically, it's just like you're tossing him into these like real world places. I thought the shark at a grocery store, very out of the box there.
I have to tip my hat to JJ on that one. It's like I've worked with JJ now for 20 years, and it never surprises me what comes out of his mouth because say like there's a flying shark attempting to eat children's store. You're like, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, that's brilliant. How do we make that work? And later in the first season, you're going to see a blue whale flying through the sky outside a building,
Wow.
and it just all makes sense. And I think it kind of leans into like that childhood imagination. Like you're bored out of your mind in a grocery store. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a shark running through trying to eat your stuffy, which is actually a real life chimpanzee? So the thing that we've always kind of looked at Sinking Ship is like kind of view the shows as sandboxes and just go crazy with imagination. So where I was excited is that when thing totally crazy, like a shark flying through a grocery store, I get to say, great, let's do it. And so it's that sort of creative partnership that I think has kind of allowed Sinking Ship to grow over the last 20 years. And that's really, credit to Tara and the team at Apple because they also trust that that will look cool. Because if you read that on paper, you're like, you're crazy. And so massive, respect and admiration for a network to actually say, hey, this is cool, let's do it.
Yeah, you guys got to be kind of have that trust of having that creative freedom to just to create in a sense. And yeah, it takes sometimes it's a studio, a network to believe in that to allow you to do that vision. Because if you have restraints, probably comes out differently. So that's
Totally.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense in that way. As I'm wrapping up here, boy, you guys have a world of ideas potentially here with all the animals on the planet to go for 10 seasons. If you just blend in, probably at one point we might see, a tarantula in space, maybe right in season 8 or whatnot.
That's the
But
next season. How do you know?
oh, I had some insider info. But that's cool knowing that you guys, I'm sure basically you have a lot of ideas going forward, right? Still untapped, on deck, ready to go, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the exciting thing of what we're trying to do is really introduce, endangered animals. What does that mean? What are and there's some episodes that we even talk about things that you can do in your own backyard, in your own community to make things better. Ultimately, it would be amazing if there was no such thing as endangered animals. And, the long-term goal is to obviously move towards that. So, I think the more that we can continue to excite kids about this topic and get them knowledgeable about it, that's really the end goal for the show. So in an amazing world, there'd be no more seasons because there's no more endangered animals. But the reality is there's such a, we always want to excite and then educate. And I think that's what we're hoping to really learn on this show is get kids excited about it, plant those seeds so that they're like, hey, I can make this difference if I do this. And, and at the end of the day, them really just pumped up about like, making a difference in their backyard, making a difference in their community, make a difference in the planet.
That's well said. I think you guys are onto something really creative and educational at the same time, but definitely the crazy and wild went out here and it turned into something really fun. You know what I mean? Because you literally tap into a kid's imagination here as we watch. It's interesting all around. So I'm glad you guys were able to make this come to life because I feel like positive shows are good for kids, and this one is like it's got a lot of messages in it too. So you guys are really being creative and accomplishing something educational and good.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jim.
Hey, Matt, this has been a pleasure. I mean, you do effects as well as you do your hair. So you're a master of many things there. Hope to
You're too
connect
funny.
again with
No,
you.
that's amazing. I look forward to that.
Take care, Matt. Keep on creating.
Thanks so much, Jim. You too. All the best.
Bye. Thank you.
Jane,
Why does everything we try to save attack us?
streaming April 14th on Apple TV Plus.